communication, and meaning combine to make us humans believe and think we know about the world and our environment as told to us through language. Hello, world, and hello, universe. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host for today, Trixie Marie Valdivino, and welcome to Pinoy Big Brother MSU, the Intro to English Language Edition. At this juncture, I am proudly present to you our reporters, starting with Elaine Borja, to be followed by Richel Tabon, and next is Louis Alojado. Fourth reporter is Lady Jane Viralillo, and last but not definitely not the least, Al Omar Pangolino.
Hi there! I am Elaine M. Borja, 18 years old of age, from General Santos City, an AB English student. Hello Philippines and hello world! I am Elaine M. Borja, your first presenter for today. So our first discussion is about definitions of language. So are you excited to know more about language? So if you are, let's go! Language is basically a system of conventional, spoken, or written symbols, utilizing which human beings are used to communicate with each other. For some, language is a complex human phenomenon, as all attempts to define it has proved inadequate. In brief, we can say language is an original noise used in actual social situations by human beings. Let us go through the definition of language delivered by different scholars, linguists, authors, and reference books. First one is Aristotle. Speech is representation of the experiences of the mind. That is according to Aristotle. Language is a speech, sound produced by human beings to express their ideas, emotions, thoughts, desires, and feelings. The second one is Saussure. Language is a arbitrary system of signs, constituted of the signifier and signified. In other words, language is, first, a system of logic or reason. Second one is the system covers both objects and expressions used for objects. Third one is objects and expressions are arbitrarily linked. Finally, expressions include sounds and graphemes used by humans for generating speech and writing respectively for communication. The third one is from Sapir. According to Sapir, language is a purely human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas and desires through a system of voluntarily produced sounds. The definition of Sapir expresses that language is mainly concerned with only human beings and constitutes a system of sounds produced by them for communication. Indeed. The fourth one is from Bloomfield. The totality of utterances that can be made in a speech community is the language of the speech community. Bloomfield's definition of language focuses on the utterances produced by all the people of the community and hence overlooks writing. Besides, he stresses form, not meaning, as the basis of language. Fifth one and lastly, from Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky says that language is an inherent capability of the native speakers to understand and form grammatical sentences. A language is a set of finite or infinite sentences, each finite length and constructed out of a finite set of elements. This definition of language considers sentences as the basis of the language. Be aware of that sentences may be limited or unlimited in number and are made up of only limited components. As we all know the definition of language, let us go through the next topic, which is the functions of language. Think about the functions. What is it? Language is a system of symbols, can be spoken, written, or indicated. As a result, a number of different functions will be knowledgeable alongside language. Let us go through and understand the functions of language in our daily lives according to Michael Halliday. The first function of Michael Halliday is instrumental. An instrumental function of language is used to achieve a certain result. Practical side because it serves a certain purpose within society. It accomplishes something either for the speaker or someone else, and this function helps us understand its purpose. So what is the example of instrumental function? Example is, I need help in washing the dishes. Giving the speaker satisfaction. So this sentence is giving the speaker satisfaction once this material need is being given and received by him or her. Second function of Michael Halliday is regulatory. So the regulatory function of language are just as important in the development of an individual as they are in maintaining proper physiological states. It is the function that controls the behavior of another person or others. An example of regulatory function of language is this sentence. Do the things it needs to be finished. The nonsense puzzle. So this function does not dwell on the material things or the services rendered, rather the actor who carried out the issued command. Function number 3. Interactional. The interactional function is the communicative use of language. When people communicate with each other, they have to put ideas into words and sentences so that others can understand them. As a result, most language use rarely think about how they are using their own language for communication purposes, or what purposes or purpose their language serve as they interact in speech situations. The example of interactional function of language is having a conversation with friends or family members, giving presentations at the workplace, and you and me greetings. Thus, this language is to establish a social relationship. So take note, this function of language is to establish a social relationship. Number 4, we have personal. The personal function of language is an important concept in linguistics. In the context of linguistics, personal function means information about people and their relationships. For example, we use pronouns such as me or you to identify a particular person who is being spoken to. Another example is, it is the language that uses "here I come." Function number 5. Heuristic. When you speak language, the term heuristic refers to how our brain organizes and processes information. The word heuristic comes from the Greek word for search, which indicates its purpose in our daily lives as an instrument for learning about reality. For example, comprehending it and solving problems. The term heuristic function of language refers to the ability or potential of language for helping people making decisions. Example of heuristic function of language: explain to me why language. So the speaker's inquisitive mind is hungry to be quenched by explanation, truth, facts, figures, and information. Number 6 function is imaginative. The imaginative function of language is the ability to use words, sounds, and grammatical forms to evoke pictures, images, or scenes in mind. Imaginative is derived from the imagination, which means the power of forming mental images or concepts that are not actual objects, but have an existence only in fancy. This function enables us to create imaginary worlds that help us understand abstract ideas by giving them concrete forms which we can see, hear, and touch. An example of imaginative function of language is: let us allow our imagination to run wild. The function of language here is the speaker expresses one's imaginative thoughts, fictional ideas, and make-believe notions out of the world stories. Sentence is: let's allow our imagination to run wild. The 7th function, lastly, representational. The representational function of language refers to the way the words can be used to refer to the things, people, and events. The representational function of language is its ability to establish a connection between an object and that object's name. This representation is manifested in many ways, such as through the use of pictures or diagrams. Example of representational function of language: the expression is, till I tell you. And the next speaker said, I know. So this example is conveying messages telling about the real world, expressing a proposition. I hope you learned something from me, the definitions of language and also the functions of language. So that's the end of our topic. So next, we will discuss our next topic from the next presenter.
Most of all, I would like to say good day everyone to Sir Fernan, or Sir in particular, good day. Permit me to introduce myself. I am Rachel M. Tapon in the first year of taking the college Bachelor of Arts in English Language Studies. I'm 18 years of age and always a learner. Good day everyone. I will now discuss to you the linguistic knowledge. But before that, let me introduce myself. I am Rachel M. Tabon, reporter for the Meantime. Please bear with me to learn more about this topic. And along this way, we can know what does it mean to know a language, what are the components of organizational linguistic knowledge, and why linguistic knowledge is important. Let me begin by providing a basic definition of the terms linguistic and knowledge. What is linguistic? Linguistic is the scientific study of language, and its focus is the systematic investigation of properties of particular language as well as the characteristics of language in general. It encompasses not only the study of sound, grammar, and meaning, but also the history of language families, how language are acquired by children and adults, and how language use is processed in the mind, and how it is connected to race and gender. On the other hand, knowledge is understanding gained through learning or experience. To have a knowledge means to have or be aware of things. Knowledge is a familiarity, awareness, or understanding of someone or something, such as facts, skills, or objects. By most accounts, knowledge can be acquired in many different ways and from many sources, including but not limited to perception, reason, memory, testimony, scientific inquiry, education, and practice. What does it mean to know a language? Anyone who knows a language must be able to speak and understand in order to communicate with others. This means that one must have the capacity to produce sounds, which carry a certain meaning, and to understand and interpret the linguistic codes in the sound produced by others. However, knowing a language goes beyond that. For even the simplest conversation required a profound knowledge of how language rules function and how words are related to one another as they form meanings. Language is the association of signs that allows communication, comprises several factors that constitute the most important part of language core knowledge. Next is, what is linguistic knowledge? According to Edmonds 1980, Ross 1967, and Perlmutter 1971, linguistic knowledge is presented as a system of constraint, a grammar which define all and only possible sentence of the language. According also to Bachman and Palmer in 1996-67, linguistic knowledge is a domain of information and memory that is available for use in gathering and interpreting discourse in language. So, linguistic knowledge is acquired fast and at an early age. This leads to the hypothesis that the system underlying it must be relatively simple. A speaker's linguistic knowledge permits them to form longer sentences by joining sentences. They are theoretically possible but highly improbable. This is a difference between having the knowledge to produce sentences and applying this knowledge. Next is the organization of linguistic knowledge. The overall knowledge base may be considered as subdivided into three components, that is, semantic, syntactic, phonological, phonetic. So how is this knowledge organized? Each component consists of sets of elements and sets of rules for manipulating the elements. In semantic syntactic knowledge base, within the semantic syntactic knowledge base, the element is the mental lexicon. The lexicon is essentially a dictionary that stores the interstock of words known to the speaker-listener. Words within the lexicon are stored, among other methods, according to the conceptual meaning they convey, together with information about their grammatical role. The second component, which is phonological knowledge base. The phonological knowledge base contains a so-called feature set of phonological elements and set of rules for manipulating these. Example, the sort of constraint these rules impose include: first, which particular speech sound the combination LM is allowable at the end of words in English, but not at the beginning. Second, how speech sounds may be transformed when they occur in particular contexts with other speech sounds. Third, how an appropriate prosodic contour may be applied to words and phrases, and so on. The third component, which is the phonetic knowledge base. The phonetic knowledge base, like the phonological knowledge base, contains a feature set of phonetic elements and rules for manipulating these elements. Now, whereas the phonological knowledge base operate the level of the sound themselves. Phones, speech sounds considered as physical event without regard to their place in the sound system are executed through neutral firing sequence that produce coordinate movement of the muscles responsible for speech production. This includes the muscles governing breathing, movements of the vocal folds within the larynx, the tongue, the jaw, the lips, and so on. It is evident that speakers are able to consciously manipulate the various physical constraints when producing connected speech. To interconnect the knowledge base, the three knowledge bases are linked in Figure 1 so as to indicate that one component is logically prior to another. This is to say, logically, when producing a meaningful utterance, the systematic syntactic knowledge base is accessed in order to select the appropriate word or combination of words from mental lexicon. The phonological knowledge base is also accessed in order to map the necessary phonological features onto the selected word or word string that will transmit the message. In addition, the phonetic knowledge base is accessed in order to program the necessary speech movement that create the speech sound wave. This is the encoding algorithm. A parallel logical sequence is implied when evoking the decoding algorithm, when decoding the linguistic sound to reconstruct the linguistic meaning. So while linguistic knowledge is important, linguistics help us understand our world. Apart from simply understanding the intricacies of world languages, this knowledge can be applied to improving communication between people, contributing to translation activities, assessing and literacy effort, and treating speech disorders. It is generally accepted that linguistic knowledge is a key element in the comprehension of reading text in a second language, able to understand printed text. The finding shows that learners, despite their weak linguistic knowledge, were able to use certain strategies to cope with difficulty. In the summary, knowing a language transforms language speaker into instrument of construction and contribution, into agents that can take the knowledge recorded in the language to generate new dimension of knowledge, and it allows speakers to distill degrees of truth and falsity in data in order to classify information. Thus, linguistic knowledge is not solely limited to language use and dominance, but also embraces world conception and is clearly a determining factor in the evolution of human communication and the creation of new knowledge. That's all. Thank you for listening. And the next reporter will discuss to you some information or more information about grammar.
Good day, everyone. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Luis J. Alojado, a first-year student of Bachelor of Arts and Language Studies at Mindanao State University General Santos City. Today, my task is to perform, or we need to learn, what is grammar and what are the other structures of grammar. Let's go. Let's define what is grammar. Grammar is the study of words and their inflections. It is also a rule of the word that govern the sound, words, sentences, and other elements. Grammar is a whole system and structure of language, or a language in general, that usually consists of syntax, morphology, phonology, and semantics, thrown in a good measure. Syntax. It is the order or the arrangement of words and phrases to form a proper sentence. The basic syntax structures follows a subject, next is the verb, and next, or lastly, is the object formula. Morphology generally refers to the internal structure of the words, meaning it is the study of the core of a part of a sentence structure. Morphology is coming from Greek word term morph, means shape or to form, and ology means to study something. Phonology, it is a branch of linguistics that study the system of sounds, patterns, and their meanings. Semantics, relating to the meaning of language or logic in a particular context. This is also the set of rules we look to the grammar for the good measure. There are 5 fundamental elements of grammar, and it is classified into word order, punctuation, tense and aspect, connectors, and determiners. What is word order? It is the arrangement or position of syntactic constituents according to sequence, pattern, and method. A standard sequence pattern is subject, verb, and object. For example, the dog eat popcorn. The dog is the subject, eat is the verb, and popcorn is the object. Let's go with the second fundamental elements, and it is the punctuation. What is punctuation? Punctuation, it is used to signify words, pauses, or stress words. There are many types of punctuation. Let's start with the first one, the comma. Comma. We use comma to separate words or a group of words in simple tree series or more. Next is the period. Period is usually at the end of the sentence, and it is to make a declarative sentence, which means the speaker don't want to discuss it anymore, or the speaker said it's final. Next is the question mark. It is when we're trying to ask some questions or some information, and it is usually starts with the word who, what, when, why, where, and how. Another punctuation is the exclamation point. Exclamation point is to show someone's opinion. It is usually seen at the very end of the word or the statement with a strong emotion. It is what the speaker expressed. Next punctuation is the semicolon. Semicolon is to join both related independent clauses that are closely related to each other. Another type of punctuation is colon. Colon is to connect two sentences when second part of the sentence explains the first part, summarize the first part. Next punctuation is what we call slash. Slash, we often use it sometimes to indicate the word or. We often use it to indicate the word or. Next punctuation is the hyphen. It is generally of two words functioning together as an adjective before the noun which we are referring to. Next is the bracket. The bracket is within the sentence to formally include information that is not relevant to the main point. Next punctuation is what we call the brace. The brace is when we present or create a list of all equal choices. Next is parenthesis. Where do we use parenthesis? Parenthesis is to enclose the information that clarifies what is used as an aside. Next punctuation is apostrophe. Apostrophe, there are three different ways on how to use it. First is to inform the possessive noun. Second is to show the omission of letters. Third, but not the least, is to indicate the plurals, numbers, and symbols. Another punctuation is what we call the ellipsis. The first thing when I hear the ellipsis is, what is an ellipse? Where do ellipse use? When I made a research what is an ellipsis, I saw an ellipse is a 3 consecutive dot. Where do we use ellipsis? It is it is generally used to save space or remove less relevant materials. Ellipses usually omit quoted passages. Last but not the least punctuation is what we call the quotation mark. Quotation mark is known to enclose the exact word or the exact term. It is, if I'm not mistaken, it is usually word by the author when the author said something important. It is what the author want to say in the full text. There are different kinds of grammar, but before that, did you know that grammar has its goal also, and it is to increase the fluency, the accuracy of speech, rather than to impart a theoretical knowledge? The first kind of grammar is what we call the pedagogical grammar. It is a description on how to use the grammar of a language to communicate well for people wanting to learn the target language. In short, this type of grammar is taught to a student learning a language rather than his or her first language acquisition. For example, a pedagogical grammar is when native speaker invert words in a sentence to form a question, just like "you know me," or it transferred into "do you know me?" The second type of grammar is what we call prescriptive grammar. Prescriptive grammar, or also known as prescriptivism grammar, and normative grammar. Rather than explaining how a language is used, the phrase prescriptive grammar refers to a system of standards or rules that control how it should be not be used. In contrast, prescriptive grammar is used to describe something. Another, it focuses on rules, do and don'ts of grammatical construction. It sets forth of rules on how language should be used correctly. It prescribes language on how to be properly used, like it is like when a doctor prescribes some medicine to a patient for it to be healed from its sickness. Next type of grammar is what we call the traditional grammar. Traditional grammar is often considered as an ancient language. It is relatively flexible and fixed in the tradition of the past. So, it is regularly asked by the experts. Still, many children thought this a correct historical form of grammar. Another, traditional grammar is like to descriptive grammar, not a prescriptive grammar, because it would not tell us what we should say, but rather it would tell us what is the different of the language looks like. According to the linguist Noam Chomsky, universal grammar is considered to be the set of traits, conditions, or things that constitute the initial things or state of language learning, and hence the foundation on which language knowledge evolves. This grammar wants us to know that all human beings share the innate and genetic set of language rules. Universal grammar also the reason that human beings understand and create sentence in the sentence brain. Comparative grammar is practiced by the 19th century grammarians. It is considered with establishing exploratory basis for the relationship between languages. When we say comparative grammar, it is from the root word compare, which means comparing words in one sentence. For an example, Lychee is twice as older as Daphne. The comparative word used in the sentence is. Next example is, this GTEC pen is better than my past Titus pen. Descriptive grammar. In this sense, the adjective descriptive is little deceptive because descriptive grammar analyzes and explains a language grammar rather than describing it. Descriptive grammar do not offer guidance. Rather, they describe how native speakers use their native language. A survey of a language is a descriptive grammar because the language will have change. A descriptive grammar from a century will differ from a descriptive grammar from the next century for any living language. It focuses on the code, linguistic data described to reveal patterns or arrangement of different grammatical categories. It is also described how speakers actually use the form of language. Lexical grammar, sometimes also known as lexical grammar. It is a term used to underline the connections of vocabulary and syntax. The term lexical grammar, coined by the renowned linguist M.A.K. Halliday, an amalgamation of two words, lexicon and grammar. Think of lexical grammar as a spectrum that includes aspects of lexical grammar and studies. According to systematic function theory, lexical grammar is diversified into metafunctional spectrum, extended in delicacy from grammar to lexis, and ordered into series of rank units. The study of lexicon grammar or grammar alone does not convey the broad picture of language as well as the lexical grammar does. Last type of grammar is what we call the lexical functional grammar, a linguist model of grammar that provides a framework for evaluating both morphological and syntactic elements. Psychology realistic grammar is another name for it. Take note, psychologically realistic grammar, another term for lexical functional grammar. This theory of lexical functional grammar, or also known as LFG, is concerned with the structure of languages, natural syntax, morphology, and semantics.
So, hello Philippines, hello world. I am Lady Jane A. Varelio, and I'll be discussing to you the language universal. Language that are not familiar or those language that we can't understand seems like meaningless or sound like a bubble to us. But little did we know that all languages that have been studied are similar. They all have the same characteristics which linguists call language universal. Language universals are examined within the field of typology. Typology has the task of examining cross-linguistic patterns. This means that all typological research is based on comparisons between languages. These languages universal classify entire languages into categories. Properties of the universal grammar that Chomsky proposed. Here are some list of the major reasons. All human cultures have a human language and use it to communicate. We all know that the world's diversity really exists, and each variety of culture has its own language that connects each of them. All human languages change over time, a reflection of the fact that all cultures are also constantly changing. As time passes by, cultures changes, and so the language that being used by a specific race. All languages are systematic, rule-driven, and equally complex overall, and equally capable of expressing any idea that the speaker wishes to convey. There are no primitive languages. Languages has a wide range of understanding where it depends on the speaker and how to use it in explaining and conveying something. All languages are symbolic systems. Every word of a language has its own definition that make it as a unique language among those languages. Next is, all languages have a basic word order of elements like subject, verb, and object with variations. Of course, in order to have a smooth conversation with the locals, using this language, it really needs to those basic properties so that it can be easily to understand. Next is, all languages have similar basic grammatical categories such as nouns and verbs. Every spoken language is made up of discrete sounds that can be categorized as vowels or consonants. The underlying structure of all languages is characterized by the feature duality of patterning, which permits any speaker to utter any message they need or wish to convey, and any speaker of the same time language to understand the message.
Hi guys, I am Alomar B. Pangulima of Malapatan, Sarangani Province, and I am an AB English student at Mindanao State University. Hi guys, I am Alomar V. Pangulima once again, and I'm going to discuss to you the origins of human language. A language, distinctive attributes of human species. I know a lot of us here wants to know when was our first language was being produced or was being used. But do you know that up until now, no one yet agrees on when language was first being used by humans or by our ancestors? Some estimations said that it was using from about 2 million years ago during the time of Homo habilis, and others affirms that it is just from 40,000 years ago during the time of Cro-Magnon man. Over thousands of years, the human species developed a vocal tract flexible enough to make a wide range of distinguishable sounds and ability to perceive differences among those sounds. The ability to use the sounds in systems which could communicate meaning. So now let's move on to the next part.
Facts about human language. Human speech organs are capable of producing 800 sounds when we are born. In infancy, a child learns which sounds are important to his or her native language and to disregard the rest of it. The older we get, the harder it becomes to learn the sounds. They are part of different languages causing from accent to form. Around the globe, there are 50,000 languages. Unfortunately, we only use a fraction of it every day. Why? Because for me, I only use 3 languages. First is what my parents taught me, my first language acquisition. Second is what the diversity, the community taught me. It is how I adapt. The third language is it came from the school and the community also. And most especially from social medias. Because as we grow older, we really need to learn another language despite of some difficulties. We really need to adapt and get information for us to convey message and for us to get information from others. Language evolves every time. The internet has not only added new words to the dictionaries, such as LOL, which means laugh out loud, it has also added new meanings to the old words. An internet troll is now commonly used to describe someone who uses inflammatory languages or goes off of topic of discussion.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You hear all their sides. It is now for the final eviction. Starting with Elaine May Borja. Are you listeners to get your point, or do your listeners appoint you to go out of the house of Kuya? Rachel Tabon. Did you do everything you could to give the knowledge about your report inside the house, or you should continue your report in the outside world? Louis Alojado. Is the definition of grammar and types of it understood by your listeners and making you stay more inside the house for another task, or people voted you to make a new start on the outside world? Lady Jane Brialio, are you part of enough to suffice the needs of everybody, or maybe there's something more missing from it and continue outside the house? Al Omar, did you meet people's expectations for you to continue more in the house of Kuya, or Kuya wants you to enjoy the rest of life in the outside world? Congratulations to our Big Five finalists, Elaine, Rachel, Louis, Lady, and Al Omar. Let's give them warm applause. I am your Masters of Ceremony, Trixie Marie Baldivino, giving you some advice. Don't ever stop learning and growing as a person. Whatever you do, give it 100% and think of it as your last. Good night.